Okay. So welcome everybody. This is Gita Gyan level 2, Essence of Bhagavad Gita, and we are going to speak about the Gita Mahatmya chapter 9 today, and also the chapter 9 summary and all that. So let's begin with offering of Guru Pranam. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Tat Sat. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimha iti namani Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langa itim Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are going through the Gita Mahatmya, and this is from the Padma Purana. So Lord Shiva tells to Parvati, "My dear Parvati, now I shall relate to you the glories of the 9th chapter." Oh, this is chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So our story today begins in this city called Mahishmati. So probably it's familiar to some of you, the name Mahishmati. It's been made popular by Tamil movie and Telugu movie and all that. So anyway, this city is a real city. It's not a mythology or anything. It's mentioned in many of the scriptures. So it was actually there at one point of time. So historically also, they have found that it is somewhere in Madhya Pradesh. So they have found the location also. Nowadays, it's called Maheshwar. The area where they think this ancient city Mahishmati was at that time is now called Maheshwar. This is in Madhya Pradesh. So it is described that this city, Mahishmati, was a very large and important city, the most important city of the southern part of the Avanti kingdom at one point of time. And it was flowing, there was a very, it was actually next to the bank of the river Narmada. So the Narmada is a holy river, and this Narmada river flows on the banks of this, on the banks of that river is this beautiful city of Mahishmati. So here's a map. So it's somewhere in the center, Madhya Pradesh, somewhere in the middle here. There's Ujjain, it's near Ujjain, and there is ISKCON also there in Ujjain, very big temple. And there's ISKCON also near Kargon, about 1 hour drive from Mahishmati. Now it's called Maheshwar. So this is modern day Maheshwar. This is the Narmada river, and it's very famous for temples also. Very beautiful temples are there. There are about 100 temples in this Maheshwar city. One of the most famous temples there is the Chaturbhuj Narayan temple. Chaturbhuja Narayana Mandir. Chatur means four, Bhuja means arms. So four-armed Narayana Mandir temple. There are also many other temples like the Sahastra Arjun temple, a temple to Lord Shiva, and like that there are few. So the Padma Purana begins with Lord Shiva telling, in this city of Mahishmati, there was once a Brahmana. And this Brahmana, his name was Madhava. And this Madhava Brahmana lived here. And this Brahmana is a good Brahmana. So he was a very devoted to scripture. He was trained in the ways of the Brahminical duties and everything. And he also had lots of faith, and he was very strictly following all the injunctions of the Vedas. And he had also good qualities of the Brahminical nature. He was humble, he was patient, he was tolerant, and all these things was there. He was peaceful. And he was also very learned, and he would receive a lot of charity. But this Brahmana, Madhava, he was trained in the, when we talk about the Vedas have 4 sections, right? I mentioned last time. The Samhitas, the Brahmanas, and the Aranyakas, and the Ishopanishad. So the Samhita and the Brahmanas are mainly dealing with rituals and in regards to karma kanda, or fruitive activities. Do something, I'll get this. Do this, I'll get that. Do this yagya, I'll get this. So like that, it's like basically materialistic activities as prescribed in the Vedas. So he was very expert in executing this. So people will call him to, for a new house, he will perform the Graha Pravesh ceremony, weddings, he will perform the ceremony. So he was a very good priest and very learned, and he was expert in fire sacrifices, especially. And in this way, he will receive a lot of charity, and he will also give charity in return. And in this way, slowly he collected the amount that he would receive from charity, and he wanted to perform a great fire sacrifice for his family. So while he was performing this great fire sacrifice, in one of the requirements of this particular sacrifice is they wanted to sacrifice a goat. So it called for sacrificial animal sacrifice, where the goat is actually sacrificed into this fire oblation. So there are many parts of the Vedas which has animal sacrifices. So later I will speak about that a little. But for now, we will just get on with the story. So while preparing for this goat to be brought, so they brought a goat, and then, for the fire sacrifice, they have to clean the goat, and then in getting it in preparation for the fire sacrifice. So, and then they were about to bring it to the fire sacrifice to be killed. So at that time, the goat suddenly started to laugh in a very loud voice. Amazingly, it spoke in a human language. It spoke back to everybody, and everybody could understand what this goat was saying. So he was laughing, and then this goat said, "Oh Brahmana, what is the benefit of performing so many fire sacrifices that simply bind us in this wheel of birth and death? Just see my position. due to performing so many fire sacrifices, I ended up as a goat. So though I was also performing in my last birth, I was also doing like you, performing so many fire sacrifices prescribed in the Vedas and all that. And see my situation. I'm also a goat now, and I'm going to be sacrificed into that fire. So when this goat spoke like this, then everybody became shocked. And this Madhava, the Brahmana, who was performing this, who was leading this fire sacrifice, he stopped the fire sacrifice. And then he, with great curiosity, he asked, and with amazement also, because the goat is speaking. So then he asked, how did you become a goat? Who are you in your previous life? How did you become a goat? Which society did you belong to? And what activities did you perform? Please tell us. So then the goat replied, oh Brahmana, in my previous birth, I was born in a very pure Brahmana family. And I very carefully performed all the Vedic activities, all the sacrificial activities given in the Vedas. In fact, I followed them very carefully. I was very meticulous and particular. So once, my wife, she wanted to worship Durga in the form of Kali, because our child had a particular disease. So therefore, to get cured from this disease, she wanted to worship Durga, and she wanted to sacrifice a goat to the goddess. So therefore, she requested me to carry out this. So what happened is, when I brought a goat, and then when I brought the goat and I brought it to the temple of Durga, and I was cutting its neck, so at that time, this goat cursed me. So it was, I didn't know at that time, but this is what happened. The goat cursed me. He didn't speak to me or anything, but now after I died, I realized. But he said, when I killed the goat cursed me. And he said, oh, sinful lowest of all, you wish to make my children fatherless? For this reason, you also will take birth as a goat in your next life. Now you're killing me and sacrificing me. In the future, you also will go through this. And then in this way, he bleated, and then he died. The goat died. So I sacrificed this goat. And then eventually, when my death came long after many years, after I died, this is the birth I took as a goat. And now I am also going to be sacrificed. But somehow, due to my pious activities, because I was quite pious, and I was also worshipping the Lord, Govinda, so at the same time, I was carrying out these activities. So by the blessings of Govinda, I was able to remember my previous birth. So that is why I'm able to speak to you and tell you all these things. So after the goat spoke like this, then the goat said, but if you wish to hear another very interesting story, I will tell you. So for your own benefit. Then Madhava, the priest, he said, okay, please go ahead. Don't stop now. Go on. And then the goat told another story. The goat said, in a place known as Kurukshetra. So we all know where Kurukshetra is. I've already shown before, right? That's the place where the Mahabharata war took place. But even before the Mahabharata war took place, as I told you, long before, Kurukshetra is a very holy place. It's a great place of pilgrimage. And actually, it's people like to go to Kurukshetra to perform charity and to perform what we call ritualistic sacrifices. So it's a famous place. So in this place, at that time, in the place of Kurukshetra, there lived a king of the name Chandra Sharma. So the goat is telling. And this Chandra Sharma was a great king, very pious king, coming from the Sun dynasty, the dynasty of the sun god, Surya Vamsa. So once at the time of the solar eclipse, now when there's a solar eclipse, so this is a very, generally is considered an inauspicious time when there are eclipses, but it's also a very great opportunity. So when there are eclipses, it is actually enjoined in the Vedas that one should give lots of charity at that time. So, or one should go particularly to Kurukshetra. So Kurukshetra is very famous for eclipse. So if at all there is an eclipse, one should go to Kurukshetra and over there, perform many of the what you call pious activities like bathing in the river, or giving charity, performing puja during this time. So it is actually, when one does like this, one gets very great credits. A lot of good pious credits is received. So that is that was what the king Chandra Sharma wanted to do. So therefore, during this eclipse, he wanted to give lots of charity. So he gave charity, but he wanted to particularly give charity to a very important Brahmana. So this Brahmana was a great spiritual, what do you call, very great devotee of Govinda. And at the same time, he was also a priest. So he wanted to particularly please this Brahmana. So therefore, he gave a lot of charity to this Brahmana. But at the same time, while the Brahmana was invited to be given charity, together with the Brahmana, behind him followed a Shudra. So a Shudra man followed the Brahmana behind without the Brahmana knowing. And when someone is called, and when there are more than one people going to get charity, the king cannot just give charity to one person only. He has to give charity to the whole group. So therefore, since the Shudra man followed the Brahmana priest, so since he was there also, so therefore he had to give charity to everyone. Now, usually Shudras are not given charity. They are maintained by the masters, the other three Varnas, because generally the fourth class person will not know what to do with the charity given. So they will misuse the charity. So accordingly, therefore, they are not given charity usually. And it is basically, these Shudra people are basically maintained by they are usually servants of the other three classes, and they are well maintained. Vedas give many injunctions on how to maintain them very nicely. In fact, it said that before sacrifices take place, women, children, and also the servants like Shudras and all, they should be fed first. They should be given clothes, they should be fed, then only but the Brahmanas should fast. So then they should perform the sacrifice. So in this way, the whole society was being taken care. But it was a strange occurrence, therefore, for the king to see that the Shudra is coming together with the Brahmana. And in this way, the king was forced to give charity to the Shudra as well. He couldn't say no. That's one of the injunctions. So in this way, during the eclipse, he gave the charity to the Shudra and the Brahmana. But after he had presented the charity to the Shudra, immediately what happened? Suddenly the Shudra, from the heart region, from the chest of the Shudra, something like a black light appeared, and then two human forms appeared in front of the Shudra. So one of it was a fifth class person. He's a dog eater. It's called a Chandala. Even lower, he's not part of the Aryan system. A dog eater or a Chandala is fifth class, extremely, barbarian type. So they are considered not civilized. So such a person appeared, and then immediately another image, this one female. So one male, one female. So both appeared out of the heart of this Shudra man who had received charity during the eclipse. So in this way, then as soon as these two personalities appeared, they started moving towards this Brahmana, and they went closer and closer to the Brahmana, and suddenly they entered into the Brahmana and they disappeared. But the Brahmana, he remained undisturbed. And immediately when he saw this is happening, he started to chant a special mantra. So he started chanting, right? And the king who was witnessing all these activities was stunned. He couldn't believe it. What is this? Supernatural, right? And he didn't say anything also. He was shocked. And while this Brahmana was chanting, suddenly the Vishnu Dutas appeared. So at the end of the chanting of this, the Vishnu Dutas appeared, and the two Chandalas, the man and the female Chandala, they came out of the body of this Brahmana, and the Vishnu Dutas exorcised them. They chased them away and they dispersed them. And in this way, the Shudra also ran away. So this is what happened. And after that, the Vishnu Dutas disappeared. So then, after all this has happened, the king was shocked, and he was also amazed to see the Vishnu Dutas. So then what happened? The king came in front of the Brahmana and said, "Oh Brahmana, oh learned person, what's happened? Tell me what happened just now." And then the Brahmana said, "Due to the offense of you giving charity to the Chandala, right? So, charity to the Shudra during the eclipse. So therefore, what happened was sin personified and offense personified appeared. So the Chandala man, which came from the heart of the Shudra, is sin personified, and his wife was offense personified. So sin and offense. This is papam and aparad. So papam means things which we should not do. Vikarma. Sukarma, vikarma, akarma. So vikarma, forbidden action, that is sin. But even worse than sin is aparad, offense. So offense are specifically things which are not tolerated at all. So for example, in doing seva or in doing any activity, in doing any good activity, there are certain things one cannot do, offenses. So these are called offenses or aparat. There is a difference. So anyway, so these are the two, the sin, papam and aparada. So both of them personified as human beings, and they came and they wanted to attack the Brahmana. So because of this sin, I'm also receiving this charity. So therefore, they wanted to come and infect my heart. They wanted to pollute my heart. So, but what did I do? I was able to understand the situation, and I was able to protect myself. Then the king said, "But what did you do? What did you chant that you were able to protect yourself from this?" And then the Brahmana said, "I chanted none other than the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita." So by chanting the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita with faith, and I remembered immediately the lotus feet of Govinda. So in this way, when I chanted, I was completely protected from both sin and aparat, offense and papam. So after saying this story, then the king, after hearing this from the Brahmana, the king was very amazed, and he thought, "I think I should also learn this. I should also do this." So then he became the disciple of this Brahmana. And then the Brahmana taught him also the recitation of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, the king also perfected his life by continuously every day chanting Bhagavad Gita 9th verse. And at the end of his life, he was able to attain Vaikuntha, Vishnu's abode. And after saying this story was being told by the goat, right? So the goat, after telling this story to Madhava, the priest, then Madhava was amazed. Then he also immediately, then he thought, that's it. What's the point of me doing all these fire sacrifices? What's the point of me doing so much of rituals so carefully? I will just give this all up, and I will just take to devotion, and I will start chanting the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So in this way, he chanted, and the goat was also given a special place. So together they chanted, and eventually when they died, they also perfected their lives and achieved the lotus feet of Govinda. So in this way, this is the glory of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as recited by Lord Shiva to Parvati Devi in the Padma Purana. So this 9th chapter is entitled Raja Vidya Yoga. Raja Vidya Yoga. So it means Raja Vidya, that means the king of knowledge. So it's the king of all understanding. And it's also called the most confidential knowledge, because that is a verse. Raja Vidyam, Raja Guyam. Guyam means the most secret. So Raja Guyam, the king of secrets, and also the king of knowledge. So what is in this chapter 9? We will hear about it in a while. But before we go there, let's discuss a little about this story and try to see what are the points that we can, or the lessons that we can learn. And if anyone has anything they want to ask particularly about this story, you can also unmute yourself and say anything. Anyone wants to share any points that they have understood from this story? Well, while we are waiting, I can just mention one point first. So the moral is basically a few lessons we can hear, we can understand. So this story is trying to illustrate the futility of karma kanda. You know, what's the futility of having sense gratification, even when it's done according to the injunctions of the Vedas. It is pointless towards in the end, because ultimately it's not going to help us to go back to Godhead. By performing punya, following the 5 sacrifices and all these things, we perform punya, right? There are many duties to perform. We can perform them very carefully. Like, for example, you know, like recently, one of the duties we have is our duties for the forefathers, the ancestors. So recently we had this, you know, Mahalaya, Amavasya and all that. So it's one of the duties of humanity to do. But this is also part of what is called the karma kanda activities. So one does this to please the forefathers, and in this way one gets piety, punya. So this is not spiritual. This is simply punya, karma kanda. So even if we very carefully and meticulously do all these things, it is recommended, yes, but it's not going to save us from the cycle of birth and death. So rather than putting so much of effort and all that in here, the story here is trying to say, switch to devotion, switch to yoga, switch to bhakti. Because whatever we do in bhakti automatically benefits all of these people. Benefits, we don't have to do other aspects of duty if one is able to fully engage himself in bhakti. Simply by performing devotional activities, all these other duties are automatically taken care of. We can still do it if we want to, but it no longer becomes compulsory, and it no longer becomes sinful for the practitioner of the bhakti yoga, or any of the bhakti yoga practitioner. So that is the idea, the importance. So you see, to perform karma kanda, one has to be very careful. You know, when somebody does a yagya, everything has to be carefully done. The ingredients have to be very pure ingredients. The mantras have to be spoken very carefully. The brahmanas have to be very pure. So in this way, it has to be carefully done. So after all this, sometimes there might be mistakes. So some mistakes can be very dangerous. You can also get the reactions from this mistake. You'll get both. So therefore, it is better to take the path of devotion. And then another point we could raise was the point of animal sacrifices. Someone may ask, you know, why is the Vedas having animal sacrifices? So we have to understand that the purpose of animal sacrifices in those days is to actually benefit the animal also. So when this animal there, you know, they have horse sacrifice, you know, different animals and things like that. But what happens in those days, the brahmanas who were chanting these mantras, they were so powerful that, you know, simply by chanting the mantra, they can light the fire. And sometimes they will test the mantra, the fruit of the mantra, by sacrificing the animals. And it's also part of the ritual sometimes. So what would happen is, these animals who are sacrificed, usually when the soul is caught in an animal species, it has to take evolutionary development of its body. That means it from goat, from in, you know, in the Shiva Purana it will say from insect to, from puchagi, pulugagi, puchagi, you know, from worm becomes insect, from insect becomes snake, and then from snake becomes, so like that. There is an evolution of species which the soul goes through, and then eventually it comes to higher species like mammals, like goat, and then elephant, and then in the end it will become cow. Cow is the last animal birth. After becoming cow, then the next birth is to become human. So, and then like that, so it's an evolutionary cycle. So when these animals are sacrificed, it actually benefits them because they are fast forwarded straight away to a human life. So from the goat, it doesn't have to go through all the various other species. It can straight away, all the other previous bad karmas which forced it to take all the various other species is already taken away, and it is fast forwarded to a human life straight away. So that was the power of those sacrifices in those days. And there are many stories of this also. Like, for example, the onion and garlic is also born out of this kind of sacrifice. There was once a cow was to be sacrificed at the yagya, and then the brahmana spoke the mantra, but somehow the flesh and one part of the body of the cow has been cut off by the wife of this brahmana, because she, for some strange reason, she suddenly developed a craving to eat the flesh and of that cow. So though it was very sinful, but she was overwhelmed with a particular desire. So, and she was, anyway, but later she became guilty and she threw that flesh away. So, but, and when sacrifice is being done, the animal should be whole. It should not have any wounds. It should be full, healthy animal to be sacrificed. So when the mantras were chanted, the mantras imbibed the flesh of the animal with potency. So although the animal was, immediately when the cow was sacrificed, it would get a human birth. And in those days, in Satya Yuga, the cow would immediately get the human birth. In the fire, the cow will go, and from the fire, the man will come out. The human will come out. But this time when the human came out, he was missing a particular piece from his body. And because the mantras were already spoken, and that particular piece which was cut off from the cow didn't enter into the fire, the wife threw it on the ground later because she got guilty and everything. But the power of the mantra had infused that flesh. So the flesh of that cow, the cow which was on the ground, it started to convert it into life came out of it. So that life was, it is said that onion grew out of that flesh. So the flesh became onion and the bone became garlic. So in this way, this is how onion and garlic came to be on earth. So that is the reason we don't take onion garlic also, because it is actually considered non-vegetarian, though it is plant, but based on scriptural understanding, it is considered non-vegetarian. And it is also considered, it's as good as eating cow. So that, not as bad, but still the sins are quite, the effect is quite heavy. So therefore, devotees don't take onion and garlic. Anyone in the yogic practice also don't take onion and garlic. And this is also, it's also rajasic and tamasic food. It increases the mode of passion and ignorance. So like that. So therefore, there are situations in the Vedas where these sacrifices were given. But you know something? In the same Vedas, because they understood that Brahmanas will lose their power, because in Satya Yuga, everything was okay. There was no vice. But in Treta Yuga, tapa, austerity was destroyed. So this is how Kali infiltrates one by one. So austerity was the first to be destroyed during Satya Yuga. And then the people no longer had the ability to be austere. Then in Treta Yuga, then at the end of Treta Yuga, when Dwapara Yuga came about, cleanliness was also destroyed. So people need cleanliness in order to perform yagyas. So how to perform yagyas? Sorry, not cleanliness. Mercy, daya. Daya was destroyed. Mercy was destroyed at the end of Treta Yuga, at the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, because mercy was destroyed, and the austerity of the Brahmanas were destroyed. So therefore, fire sacrifices were forbidden. So no longer, I mean, they can continue fire sacrifices, but animal sacrifices were forbidden since mercy was already destroyed. Because the animals being sacrificed, they didn't benefit. So then it will become himsa, sinful. So therefore, it was forbidden from Dwapara Yuga onwards. And then in like that. So therefore, in Kali Yuga also, actually speaking, animal sacrifices are not allowed in the main scriptural injunctions in the Vedas. But it is still given as an option for those people who are worshipping devatas like Durga, for those people who want to eat meat, because as I mentioned, there are all kinds of people in this world. So not everybody is able to be vegetarian or what. So for these people, those in the mode of ignorance, so they are recommended to sacrifice whatever. If at all they want to eat meat, they have to do it only once. According to the injunctions of the Vedas, they should eat it only during the Amavasya time. So during Amavasya, right, they should sacrifice an animal and offer it to the deity, Durga or Bhairava, Mahabhairava, like that. And in this way, once in a month, they are allowed to indulge in this. And at that time, they also offer intoxication, liquor, and all these things. So there are still some temples like that doing this. But nowadays, they don't just wait for Amavasya. They try to do it more often, more frequently. But by right, it should be during only Amavasya. But it doesn't mean that they don't get sin. They get sin for killing the animal, just like how we saw here, the goat cursed the man, right? And then he became a goat in the next life. But by performing these sacrifices, though they get sin, in their next life, they get elevated slightly to the next level, simply because they have followed the injunction of the scriptures carefully. So by dint of following the scriptures, even though it is karma kanda activity, they still get benefited. Though they suffer the reactions, but they get a better birth in their next life. So in this case, the goat actually was able to remember the past life. And in this way, he was a special situation. He was bringing about the glory of the Bhagavad Gita to be spoken. So that's how it is. So therefore, generally, animal sacrifices are forbidden in Kali Yuga. And then we can also understand another point here, how offense and sin. Okay, that's a question. Isn't killing animals a sin for humans? Yeah, so that's what I mentioned just now. It is sin, but there are some people who can't avoid it. If there is no way out given to them, they will still do it, and they will actually degrade lower. So just for the sake that they don't degrade lower, so there is an injunction given in the Puranas in the mode of ignorance. So over there, this is for those type of people in the mode of ignorance. So for them, they will, if there is an injunction where they are allowed to do this under restriction. So by doing this, they will advance, although they are going to suffer the sin in their next life. So yeah, and then there's another question. What about animals which are sick? Yes. Are we advised to end their suffering? Not really, actually. So it is understood that they have to, why they are going through the situation they are going through, they are actually going through their particular karma, the soul. The soul is going through the particular karma, and we cannot kill them. So though we may, it's modern understanding that it's considered merciful and all that, but still it is not accepted in scripture. We don't kill animal even to put them out of their misery. That is basically, for one thing, it is cutting short. So you may save them in their misery now, but they wanted to clear it in this life before they move on to their next life. But if they have not cleared it, that some of that misery will go to us, and the remainder misery will be carried by that animal in their next life. So therefore, it's best to let it run through the course. And what we can do instead for such animals, we can give them prasadam, we can give them, Charanamrita, we can say the holy names. So in this way, they will benefit. Okay. All right, then there's another question. Any animals should not be killed. Is it sinful then? Why there is this disparity between cows and other animals? Yes, so the idea is that for food, some animals can be eaten or in emergency situation. Some animals can be harmed. So in emergency situation, like, when a tiger attacks you or things like that, you can harm them. And there are certain animals which you can kill and you will not get sin. The type of animals which you can kill without getting sin is, example, snakes and poisonous creatures. So it is said that that kind of life is very painful for the living entity. A snake's life and a poisonous creature's life, it's extremely painful, and they are full of envy, such creatures. So therefore, there is an injunction where if you kill them, then roaches, I don't know, I don't think so. So yeah, I know, I don't like roaches also. But generally, this is only for poisonous creatures. So for that, it is allowed, even if they don't attack you. Otherwise, at least they should be able to attack you. Then only you can kill them based on self-defense. But besides that, no, you can't kill them. So the sin of killing the cow is the highest sin. But when I'm talking here, we are not saying simply killing. We are talking about Vedic injunction sacrifice. So as I mentioned, the sacrifice is to benefit the animal. So the animals are actually put in the sacrifice and they get benefited and they actually get a better life in their next life. And the power of the mantras was such that it proved it. In those days, it was able to prove it. Immediately, the animal which is sacrificed will come out as a human or as a shining personality, and then he will get elevated. So this is, and it completes the ritual of the sacrifice. But after Satya Yuga and after Treta Yuga, this was no longer possible. So therefore, no more animal sacrifices. But it was still going on. It was still going on in Kali Yuga. People were not understanding it and they were still doing it. That is one of the main reasons why Lord Buddha came. Actually, it is mentioned in the scriptures that Lord Buddha specifically came to few reasons. And one reason was mentioned particularly to save the animals. So because in India at that time, in the name of fire sacrifice, everywhere, left and right, people were killing animals in this way. And it was taken as an excuse. So Lord Buddha came to completely reject the Vedas. Okay, enough. You have completely misunderstood the whole thing. Push aside the Vedas. And then you come and follow me. And I will tell you, first rule, ahimsa. Second rule, okay, start from the basic again. So in this way, they were made to understand. Okay, so that's the idea behind this. What do you call?
Prabhu,
Yes.
can I ask something?
Yeah, please.
You're saying that when you're doing fire sacrifice, you're supposed to follow bhakti. Isn't fire sacrifice is also bhakti, where the brahmanas actually following with bhakti? Why
Yes.
is that not right? You're still supposed to follow the other mantras.
Okay, thank you for that question. All right, so there are different types of fire sacrifices. So nowadays in Kali Yuga, no animals are to be sacrificed in any of the fire sacrifice. So that is clear. Okay. So other than that, there are other types of yagyas. So for example, when we go to a new house, there is fire yagya. When the child is born or during marriage and all that, there is yagya. But the point here is, it's not that we are saying that in bhakti, while performing these sacrifices, it is meant for the pleasure of Vishnu, right? Any sacrifice, any fire sacrifice is meant for the pleasure of Vishnu. The yagya Purusha is Lord Vishnu himself. So if we have that kind of consciousness and we do the fire sacrifice that we are trying to please Vishnu, then it is bhakti. So remember, bhakti is not about activity. We mentioned this in Karma Yoga so many times already. So it's not the work, it is the consciousness of the work. So if we do this, even if you're doing normal work, if you're working outside, if you're cleaning the house, or whatever, if the consciousness is, I'm cleaning the house where the Lord is situated. This is the Lord's house. I'm cleaning the Lord's house. So if we have that kind of consciousness, or we are cooking, not cooking for me, I'm cooking for the Lord to be offered in the house. So therefore, if we have that kind of consciousness, so it is bhakti. So in the same way, fire sacrifices, what the difference here is, people used to do not because to please Krishna or to please Vishnu. They used to do it according to the Vedas, because the Vedas will also say, do this fire sacrifice. If you want a good wife, do this fire sacrifice. If you want a good family, do this fire sacrifice. So people used to become very attached to the result. They didn't really do it for the sake of pleasing Vishnu. That was not the main goal. Like, when Yudhishthira Maharaj, he performed the fire sacrifice, the Rajasuya sacrifice, he did it to please Krishna. And Krishna was glorified in that fire sacrifice. So that is bhakti. So the fire sacrifice only became an excuse to perform bhakti. So that is all right. But if it is simply, the goal is simply, okay, I'm doing yajna because I want to get this, I want to be purified, that is called karma kanda. And at the same time, fire sacrifices are not the yuga dharma in Kali Yuga. So as I mentioned also, we can try to do it, but very high chances that we will not do it correctly, because the brahmanas are not pure. There are a few things we need to observe when we do perform these fire sacrifices. Also, we need to, the mantras has to be pronounced correctly. The muhurta must be right. So a lot of things are there. So there is a very great chance it can go wrong, especially nowadays when the brahmanas are not properly trained. They are all simply business brahmanas. They are not supposed to take money in that way, but we should give them charity sufficiently. But the mentality and the mood is all different now. So therefore, knowing this in Kali Yuga, that is no longer the main Yuga Dharma. Chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the Yuga Dharma. In fact, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, later we will see, chapter 9 itself, amongst japa, amongst sacrifices, I am japa. He says, amongst all sacrifices, I am japa. So chanting Sankirtan is the main sacrifice in Kali Yuga. So what we do nowadays is, we don't want to discourage people. We don't want to, Krishna also says, right? Don't discourage people, because then people might think, oh, I also don't want to do sacrifice. They don't end up chanting, but at the same time, they also don't do sacrifice. So these kind of people, then it's not very good. They don't get any benefit. So therefore, what devotees usually do, it's not necessary. In fact, when once in Vrindavan, when they wanted to install the deities, they called priests from the other sampradaya, because that time the devotees were not really trained. So they didn't know how to perform. So they actually called priests from the other main temples in the Vrindavan, and then they asked them to go and perform the fire sacrifice so that the deities are installed. But Prabhupada told them, actually, this is not important. So you people chanting and doing Sankirtan, that is the real fire sacrifice. This is simply so that the community will accept the Hare Krishna movement at that time. So therefore, we do this as an excuse. Okay, I'll just pause. I'll just mute you. Okay, all right, it's already muted. So therefore, these things are we take it as an excuse. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't do. But we don't do, it's okay, because as long as we are following the strict bhakti processes, which are basically Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. These are the main processes of bhakti. And fire sacrifices, if we do, then it's like an excuse to call people, an excuse to serve Brahmanas, an excuse to feed the Vaishnavas, an excuse to glorify the Lord, an excuse to, serve the cow, an excuse to get together as a social gathering and meet everybody. Because if we just call people, okay, you come to my house, let us all sing and chant together, people might not come. But if you say, I'm having a yagya, then people will come. So when they come, then we can get together and we can chant together. So in any sacrifices, there must be chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. There must be recitation of scripture. and there must be prasadam given to everyone, and the Lord must be worshipped in some way. Either he is glorified in katha, or there is some kind of a ceremony. And at the same time, the priest also has to be given sufficient charity. So these are all the aspects that has to be there. So this is the understanding, Mataji. So it's all in the consciousness. It's not compulsory. We don't have to do it nowadays. If you are following in Kali Yuga, if you are following the bhakti path, then we don't have to do this. But if you are not following bhakti, those who are fruitive workers, then they have to do it. But for the devotee, they don't have to, but they can and use it as a method for preaching, as also and also a way to get people to come and get involved in the chanting. Okay, so right, so I think just now also the question on the disparity between cow and other animals. So the cow is never to be killed, right? So when we give the cow in sacrifice in Satya Yuga and Treta Yuga, it's not considered killing. It is according to the scripture. So therefore, it is actually benefiting that animal. And it's a very powerful yagya performed by perfect brahmanas. But nowadays, it's not allowed. So definitely a cow is not allowed to be killed. Other animals, there is different levels of sin to it. You can't escape from it. There's no way to escape a sin of killing an animal, except poisonous creatures. And in fact, it said that killing a cow, the sin is equivalent to the sin of killing a brahmana. So it is the highest sin one can commit, actually. It's the same level of sin as killing a human brahmana. All right, so let me just check the time. Okay, it's 8:30. All right, let me just go through quickly some other aspects of this. Right, so just now I was saying, let me just finish the last lesson. I was just thinking, offense and sin can be removed by devotion. So karma kanda of fruitive activity, just like how the king, by performing charity and all that, even during Kurukshetra, even in Kurukshetra, in the eclipse, and yet he could not escape from offense or from accidental sin. So, but then the protection for this is to include devotion in this picture. So that's another point also. Whenever we have to do any samskaras, and ensure that there is recitation of the Gita, somebody is sitting and reciting the Gita somewhere while the ceremony is going on, or there is Hare Krishna Mahamantra Kirtan going on in the background, or prasadam is being offered. So some aspect of devotion has to be there to perfect that particular samskara, so that it is free of fault. So that is another important point. So in this way, the Brahmana, by chanting the Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, was able to defend himself, completely protect himself from sin and also offenses. So in this way, we are recommended to take up the process of bhakti rather than karma kanda. Okay, so actually I wanted to finish the story quickly and move on here, but never mind. I'll see whether I can finish it. If we can't, it's all right. So this is chapter 9, Raja Vidya Yoga, most confidential knowledge. So we want to talk about this Raja Vidya Yoga. Now, wanted to ask you this question. If, let's say, somebody asks why we are here in this material creation. If all of us were part and parcel of God, how is it that we came to be in this material world? So that is one question, right? And so anyone has an answer for that question? Do you have any opinion on this?
Yes, Prabhu, can you answer?
Yes.
To finish up our karma.
So, okay, but yeah, but where did we get the karma in the first place? If we were with God, if we were with
because
God,
our desires, because our desires.
Okay, that's a good answer also. Yes, thank you. But
I hope I
Can. But how did we get those desires while we are with God? So to help us to understand, I've sort of prepared this small presentation just to help us to understand. Okay, so now we are all part and parcel of God. Krishna himself says, I am the seed-giving father. The living entities are like the children. So we are all like his children. So if I have to ask you, why do we have children? Why did God even have the jivatmas? Why were we all created in the first place? So the answer can be understood in, if we can answer this question, why do we have children? Anyone wants to try why we have children? I mean, don't say that we want to continue the dynasty. We want to ensure that the family line goes on. Okay, all that is external reason. But, you know, to have children is not an easy thing. The parent has to go through sacrifice. The father has to sacrifice. The mother has to sacrifice, sleepless nights, go through so much of pain, struggle to bring up a child. You know, it's a lot. It's not easy. So what is the motivation? Why that the parents want to have a newly married couple? They married and then they are so eager to have the child. Why? Any reason?
Can I try, Prabhu?
Yes, please.
Okay, probably there is a owing of karma, and that is the probably the sanchita karma you were telling before. There's some owing to that particular person which need to be settled, so they come as a child or as a related party for us to finish up the karma.
Okay, yeah, that is the type of children we are going to get. So if we do get a child, then that particular child will of course be linked to our karma. But what I'm saying here is, I have a choice. I just got married. Let's say I just got married, and then my wife and I, we love each other and all that, and then we feel like we want to have a child. Why? Why do we feel like we want to have a child? So somebody has given an answer. Malati Mataji has given a nice answer. To love and cherish, right? We want to have children because we want to share our love with them. So let's say we are married, we are happy, the wife is happy, the husband is happy, we got married, a new house, a new car, a new family, and then what's lacking? New children or children or new people in the family, right? So they feel like, I've got so much to share. I'm young, I want to share my love with my children, so therefore they want to have children. So in the same way, you know, if you're a rich man, the rich man has everything, but then he wants to share it with his child. So in this way, God is also wanting to share with us. He wants to share his kingdom with us. And he wants to have a loving reciprocation with the Jivatma. So that is why the Jivatmas are there. Because the Lord, he can enjoy unlimitedly. And one of the ways to enjoy is with another living entity also, Jivatmas. So there is only Purusha and there is Prakriti. There is the Lord and there is Jivas. So in this way. So because the Lord wants to enjoy with the Jivatmas, so the Jivatmas come into being, and then the Lord also wants to enjoy this love. So it's a loving reciprocation, right? It's basically a reciprocation of love. Now, what is the hallmark of love? If there is going to be love, can the love be forced? So obviously, if someone were to give you a love potion, and then after that you fall in love with that person who gave you the love potion, then you may, you know, externally behave like as if you love the person or you're besotted with that person. But the person who gave you the potion will know that this is not real, that they only love you because they gave you this potion. So similarly, sometimes, you know, a rich man may have many people who claim they love him, but then we don't know. The rich man may not know. He may always doubt until his end of his life whether they really love him or they are simply, you know, saying they love him because they want to enjoy the facility of the rich man. So in the same way, right, love can only exist when there is freedom of will. So there cannot be love unless if there is no freedom to select. So therefore, the Lord gives us, the Jivatmas, freedom of will, the ability to choose. The Lord doesn't force us. So therefore, the Lord will never force us into anything. Everything has been given a choice. And the Lord is so powerful that he can actually provide whatever desire that we want also. If you want something, he can provide it, no problem. So therefore, he gives us a choice. Now, if the Jivatmas, so this is the choice that we get lah. So this Jivatmas, if let's say we suddenly open our eyes and we see this personality standing in front of us, this great, powerful, when we come face to face with the majesty of God, when this being in front of us is so majestic, so powerful, so great, so beautiful, so sweet, every good quality is in maximum, everything that you could hope for, everything is wonderful in that person. So much of energy, all kinds of energies are serving this person, right? Everything is simply out of the it's just amazing. So imagine ourselves now, if we meet somebody like that in our life, let's say in our working life, let's say we enter a new job, and then we meet someone who is so wonderful in that job, another colleague who is very rich, who is very handsome or very beautiful, who is having a, extremely, everything is so wonderful about that person. So what will be our reaction? Anyone wants to say? Usually when we meet somebody like that, somebody so wonderful, great, sweet, kind, powerful, rich, good looking. So what would be our reaction when we meet such people usually? So there are two ways we can react. So one way is we can choose to love that person because we appreciate that person. Wow, this person is so nice. This person is so great. This person is so beautiful. This person is so wonderful. So naturally, you find yourself being very attracted to that person, and then you may fall in love with that person. And then when one falls in love with that person, one wants to be with that person all the time. One wants to serve that person. So therefore, when the Jivatmas see Krishna, Krishna is called all attractive, right? They may decide to love and serve Krishna. And simply because of his personality. So this is called prema, right? So there are jivas who develop prema upon seeing such a person. Now, the other reaction which somebody can have when somebody sees, such a great personality or wonderful personality is, the other reaction is called envy. It is called anasya, something like that, Sanskrit. So envy. We can develop envy in our heart when we see such person. Sometimes we don't like to see other people doing well. I hope not. So, but it happens in this world. Sometimes when we see other people see, the evil eye, drishti, all this happens because of envy. So, and people are sick, they become your secret enemy. The moment you become very rich or very powerful or very successful, we develop a lot of secret enemies. So, these people will claim that they are friends, they are very nice, everybody, we become very popular suddenly, and at the same time, there will be lots of secret enemies. So this is the nature of some people. So the thing is, the Jivatmas also, when they see the Lord, when they see such a personality, instead of developing prema with the pure desire of loving and serving this personality, they develop kama. This kama comes from the seed of envy. Envy is called asuya. Asuya. Asuya is envy. From envy comes the desire is Icha, and this desire is for dominion. So that means when we see such a great personality, the jivas may think, it would be so nice if I also had this, right? It would be so nice if I also had this energy. It would be so nice if I also could be could be like this person. So when that kind of thinking comes from asuya, which is envy, it grows into icha, desire for dominion. So these two are opposites. Prema is the opposite of kama. Kama is the opposite of prema. Where there is prema, there cannot be kama. So prema is pure. It is unalloyed. It is unmixed. Whereas kama, it is the complete reflection of it. And what happens at this time? So the Lord understands this situation. The Lord, therefore, he doesn't force. He could use his power to force the devotee to go to him, to fall in love with him. But he doesn't want to, because that is not love. So therefore, he gives the choice. Now, for these devotees for the jivas who became devotees and develop prema, it becomes natural for them to stay with Krishna. Now, Krishna has two types of energy. He has millions and millions of energy, but it can be categorized into two classifications. So one is called the spiritual energy, which is Antaranga Shakti. Actually, it's not, both are spiritual, but the understanding here is one is called the internal energy and the other is called the external energy. So Antaranga means internal. Antaranga. Antar means internal and anga means limbs. So the energies are like the limbs which serves the Lord. So these are internal energy, and this internal energy, the focus of this internal energy is to serve Krishna. So everything is directly serving the Lord, and the nature of this internal energy is cognizance or truth, satyam. So it reveals the truth, it destroys illusion, and it is basically satyam. So therefore, that is the nature of this energy. So while the prema bhaktis, the devotees who have developed prema, they can remain within this energy of the Lord. So this energy takes place as the spiritual world. It takes place in there are various transformations of this energy. One of this energy, the Sandhini Shakti, which is part of the Antaranga Shakti, is basically developing the spiritual world. So to remain there for these devotees is wonderful, no problem, because they also want to serve Krishna and they want to love and serve Krishna, and the energy also wants to love and serve Krishna. So the energy's purpose is also to serve Krishna, and the energy makes them always remember Krishna as the original personality. He is the ultimate, he's the master, he's the Purusha, whereas the jivas are all sevas. So, Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas. The dharma of the jiva is to serve Krishna eternally, Nitya Das. But this service is not the type of service that we think, because seva in material world is very terrible. To be a servant, to be known as a servant in material world is actually a very bad thing. But remember, the spiritual world is a reflection of the material world. So whatever that is very bad in the material world, very low in the material world, it is very high in the spiritual world. So just like how kama is a reflection of prema, lust is the transformation of prema, which is the perversion of prema in this material world. So in the spiritual world, to serve the Lord is one of the highest positions. It is very, very great. And the Lord is not that type of master that we think we will get in the material world. He is the type who is extremely wonderful to the servants. He is so kind. He is trying to, serve them in different ways. You see how Krishna became the chariot driver to Arjuna. We see how he washed the feet of Sudama, the Brahmana who came to visit him. And in so many ways, the Lord reciprocates beautifully with his devotees. So like that, there are different rasas, different flavors of how we can be servants to the Lord. We can serve him in neutrality. We can serve him as a servant. We can serve him as a friend. We can serve him as a parent, like Vatsalya Rasa, like Mother Yashoda and all. Then there is also Madhurya Rasa, like the gopis. So there are different types of service, different flavors of it, all beautiful, and it is full of ananda. So Antaranga Shakti is suffused with ananda. So these prema bhaktas who are in Antaranga Shakti have no problem. But the ones who have developed envy, they cannot remain in this Antaranga Shakti because they have developed envy. So the more they are there, because Krishna is Vibhu, he is very large, very powerful, very great, whereas we are Anu. There is no way we can match Krishna, no way at all. So therefore, for this envy to remain in the Antaranga Shakti is very painful. So this is not anartha. This is simply it's the nature of the jiva to choose. He can choose how he feels. So because of this nature, he cannot remain there with the kingdom of God. So therefore, the Lord understands, okay, this particular jiva wants to enjoy lordship. He wants to have dominion. He wants to be the lord of what he sees. He wants to be the master, and he wants others to serve him. So he has developed this kind of mood. He wants to be like me. So it's not possible to be like me in the spiritual world because everything is centered around Krishna. And it is all classified as truth, satyam. So therefore, the only way that this jiva, so the Lord understands, okay, you feel you want to enjoy, no problem. So I'm not going to force you. So what you can do, the Lord is very powerful. So he has another Shakti, another set of Shakti, which is a shadow. So this Shakti is called Bahiranga Shakti. External energy is basically a shadow of this Antaranga Shakti. So this Shakti, the nature of this Shakti is Maya, illusion. Antaranga Shakti was Satyam, Bahiranga Shakti was Maya. So when this is what is needed for the jiva to satisfy his ichha for dominion. So when he comes here, when he comes to the Bahiranga Shakti, then he can forget that Krishna is the supreme, and he can think that he is great, he is wonderful, he is powerful. In this way, he can satisfy his dominion. So using the Bahiranga Shakti, Krishna creates the material world. So this material world is made out of this Bahiranga Shakti. So we have learned this already in the Gita, chapter 13 onwards. We saw how Pradhan changes into Mahatattva, and then Mahatattva, like that, Prakriti, and then Mahatattva, and then eventually the 5 elements and all that creates the material creation. And embodied in this way, the jiva comes to the material creation to satisfy his desire for dominion. And the Lord gives him this opportunity. So this is the problem. This is why we are all here in this world. But that's not what the Lord wants. The Lord doesn't want the jiva to be in this material creation. He wants the jiva to come back to him. Imagine if you have children. If one child says, I don't really want to be here, so will we really let it go when the child wants to go and stay with somebody else? We will try to make plans to get the child back with us, right? We will try to make plans to ensure the child, we will somehow get the child to love us. We will try to win the child's heart. So therefore, in this way, the Lord has a plan in this world. This Bahiranga Shakti is a special place where it is meant to teach lessons to the jiva who is in this trying to enjoy dominion, to eventually give that idea up, that this is a false idea. It is actually false because he cannot be dominant, because he is jiva. Everything is made by the Lord. The Shakti is belonging to the Lord. Even Maya Shakti belongs to the Lord. The world is created by the Lord. The body is created by the Lord. The idea that the Jiva can be a Lord is simply illusion. But to satisfy the Jiva, the Lord is so powerful, he can actually create such an illusion just to satisfy the Jiva. So in this way, he allows the Jiva to be in the material creation. But he has a plan. The plan of this material creation is to slowly teach the lesson to this Jiva so that he himself will give up this idea. He himself will develop the idea to go back to Krishna. He himself will develop that love, that prema. So once he develops that prema within this material world, then he becomes fit to go back, just like a helium balloon where the rope has been cut off. Once the Jiva develops that prema here, then he will fly all the way back up to Antaranga Shakti, back to the spiritual kingdom. So that's why the Lord created the world in this way. Ashashvatam Dukkhalayam. So it is a temporary place made out, and there's lots of misery in it. So in this way, but that doesn't mean that the Lord has purposely, tried to spoil the fun of the Jiva. He has created a very elaborate universe. The Jiva wants to have fun, he can have fun. He can go to Swargaloka, he can go to Indraloka, he can go to Brahmaloka. Unlimited enjoyment is there, but it is temporary. It cannot be eternal because it is all illusion. So therefore, in this way, and he has to deserve it also. So if he wants to enjoy, he has to come to earth. He has to follow the rules and regulations set by Lord. And by following this rules and regulations, then he get promoted. And the Lord has set these rules and regulations in such a way that it teaches the Jiva automatically detachment. It teaches the idea of sacrifice. It teaches the idea that everything belongs to the Lord. And in this way, slowly, while he's following the rules and regulations, he gets brainwashed. And he gets purified. And in this way, he develops himself higher and higher. And at the same time, he goes through the difficulties in life. He goes through the 4 problems, right? Janma, Vyadi, Jara, and Mrityu. Birth, disease, old age, and death. And in this situation, he gets caught in karma. So this karma is not the Lord's doing. The Lord said, you follow all the rituals that I've given you. You follow all the rules that I've given you in the Vedas. I've created this material world, which is like a big playground for you to enjoy and try to be the Lord. But you have to follow rules because there are other living entities here also, and you cannot do himsa to other people. So that is rule number 1. So then there are like that other rules also. And at the same time, there are certain hidden rules where Krishna wants you to also develop sacrifice mood, develop austerity mood. So in this way, these rules are all set. And where do we find these rules? The rules are in the Vedas. The Vedas are therefore known as the manual of the universe. So this is the understanding. So he has given all this. He has created the playground for us. He has given us the rule book on how we can enjoy, how we can go get what we want. And in the same way, while doing it, Krishna's purpose also gets fulfilled. We also slowly become purified by following his order. And in this way, those people who come to the level of jnani, they come to the level that they say, okay, I think this world, I have understood that this world is an illusion. I've understood that there's actually no real happiness in this creation. So now I want to go back to God. So is there a way? So in the Vedas also, Krishna has given the way. He has given yoga. And he has given 2 paths to this yoga. So what are the 2 paths? He has created the jnana path. Sorry, the animation is not properly done yet. He has created the jnana path, the Sankhya path or the jnana path. So here, 1 path is there, and then there is also the bhakti path. Now, for the envious person, the jiva who is envious, right? Why we came down to this material world? Because we developed some envy, right? So for some of these people, the envy hasn't gone yet. They will say, if you say to them, Krishna is God, why should Krishna be God? I don't accept Krishna as God. I don't accept there's any God. Why should there be God? I am God. Or the scientists are God. Or we human beings, we don't need any gods. So this is all basically envy talking. So for such people, how to help them? Because they cannot accept the Vedas. They cannot accept certain things. So therefore, different rules and regulations have been given for the benefit of self-realization. So, for example, you don't have to accept that I want to serve God. All right, I don't have to serve God, but I want to enjoy material existence. I want to enjoy good things. So the Vedas show us ways of how to enjoy those things without having to surrender to Krishna. So like that, that's the karma kanda path. But slowly, knowledge is there in each of these scriptures to help us come towards Krishna. But even here also, the jnana path is mainly for the atheist, because they don't want to surrender to Krishna. They just want to escape. They want to come out from this material situation. But they do not know that they cannot simply come out. For example, if somebody is in prison, like this material creation is like prison, imagine. Huh? But if the person comes out of prison, what happens to that person? He is free, he is liberated, he is free from the miseries of prison. But what will he do? He is out of prison, but he doesn't know what to do with his life. So what will he do? He may do something, he may do this, he may do something else, he may do charity, or he may also do some bad things, or he doesn't know what is to be done. So that is the person who has become liberated. The Brahman realized person, due to understanding his nature, that he is spirit, soul, and all these things is illusion, therefore he has come out of this material understanding and he has become liberated, Brahman. But he doesn't know what to do. So therefore, it is not the ultimate solution, because he may again drop down. Because remember earlier I mentioned, if one cannot go to the Antaranga Shakti, there is no other option. One has to go down to the Bahiranga Shakti only. So even if he is in Brahman, he cannot enter into Antaranga Shakti because he has not developed Prema, Bhakti. So the key or the passport to enter into the kingdom of God is Bhakti. Liberation, even Brahman realization, is not sufficient to go to the kingdom of God. It is only sufficient to bring us out of this misery of human existence, materialistic existence. We remain suspended like that for a very long time until we have the option to meet another devotee, or we fall down again into this material world. So therefore, there's the jnana path, which begins with karma yoga. So, and then karma yoga, and then like that they move on to jnana yoga. And basically, once they reach jnana yoga, they become liberated. So he develops Brahman realization at that point. But he's not completely reached the goal. This is not what Krishna wants. Yes, you're liberated, that's fine, but you need to come back to me. So therefore, it's not complete. And once the person understands Jnana Yoga, he knows that he's not done yet. He needs to perform meditation to theoretically apply that knowledge which he has obtained. So therefore, the practical aspect of it is meditation. So it's called the path of inaction, because he no longer does materialistic duties. He now goes alone, sits somewhere alone, and simply looks like as if he's doing nothing. So it's called the path of inaction. So then he performs dhyana, meditation. So while the jnani is trying to do these stages, if he is very fortunate, from practicing karma yoga, he may shift to bhakti. But if he's not fortunate, then he may go higher to jnana yoga. And from jnana yoga, also in case he meets a devotee, or in case he understands the goal of the ultimate understanding is Krishna, he knows it's Krishna, but he cannot accept it. So therefore, he may go to dhyana yoga. But if he knows and then he accepts it, or he meets a devotee, he may switch to bhakti. So then let's say this person continues to dhyana. He's now searching, what is the goal of life? What is the purpose of it? So by searching, he comes to dhyana yoga. And in this way, what's the goal of dhyana yoga? He discovers the Paramatma. He searches inside. He inverts his senses inside and he searches for the self. And he finally finds the self, the Atma. And when he finds the Atma, he also finds the Paramatma. And then he is convinced. Then he's realized that this is the ultimate personality. So he's developed Paramatma realization already. But this is also not complete because there is no bhakti yet. So after he discovers this Paramatma, he wants to know what is this Paramatma all about. But at that time, he's already liberated. So in this joyous state, situated in transcendental happiness, but he thinks that there is nothing further, nothing greater than this. So that is the person who has attained Paramatma. But that's not the end of the story. So if he's very fortunate, he may come across a devotee. And then in this way, but actually, once he attains Paramatma, he knows that the bhakti is the next stage. He has to go to the next stage of bhakti because he has already met Paramatma. He knows for a fact already, and he has become attracted by seeing the Paramatma. So therefore, he develops into bhakti. So that is the way Krishna wants to trick people who don't want to surrender to Krishna. So this path of jnana, it doesn't begin with surrender. It begins with searching. It begins with understanding that there is something more. So they search, and ultimately they search within themselves, and then they find bhakti, they find the Lord, and then they try to surrender. Then they switch to bhakti to try to surrender. Whereas the other path, right? So here Bhagavad Gita 5.15 says, actually both path is leading to the same place only. Eventually it's leading back to bhakti only. So Krishna says, one who sees both paths, the goals are the same, they actually see the things as they are. So both paths gives you the same goal eventually in the end. So in the bhakti path, we have bhakti. But what is this bhakti? So this bhakti, it begins, Krishna says, he in fact tells the jiva, right? He tells Arjuna, of these two paths, he says, don't take the other path. The other path is very difficult because he doesn't want my help. That person who takes the Sankhya path, he doesn't want my help. He wants to develop himself and search himself on his own. So therefore, I can't help him because that's his desire. But if you take the bhakti path, you keep me as the goal and you are starting from the beginning. The advantage here is you have my help. So Krishna, he says, right? Declare it boldly, Arjuna, my devotee never perishes. I carry what he lacks and preserves what he had. He mentions that in Gita. So we have Krishna's direct help to advance. So this is, so in the beginning we practice sadhana bhakti. In the beginning we practice sadhana bhakti. That is basically bhakti in practice. We haven't developed the prema yet. We know that that is the goal. We have become convinced that that is the goal theoretically, and we try to practice, right? So we try to perform sacrifice for Vishnu, for example. We try to dedicate everything to the Lord. And in this way, by following the 9 processes of bhakti, beginning by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Vishpada Sevanam, and all that, we will eventually come to the next stage. The next stage is we will learn to surrender to the Lord. So when we learn to surrender to the Lord, then we move up from sadhana bhakti, we come to bhava bhakti. Now this is the same level. Now bhava bhakti is also Brahman realization. Once this is called bhakti when one is already liberated. So from where does the liberation comes? It comes from surrender. By surrendering to the Lord takes charge. And in this way, we become liberated from this cycle of birth and death. And we are free to continue our bhakti. So, and in this way, one moves upwards, further improves his bhava, strengthens his bhava bhakti further. Bhava means bhakti in ecstasy. That means one is already liberated, it's already in ecstatic situation, but one is further strengthening it. Comes to bhava bhakti at a higher level, and then at this stage one is already, he knows about Paramatma already, but Paramatma is not his goal. He wants to go beyond towards the Lord. So this is where the Dhyana Yogi also switches to Bhava Bhakti. From the Dhyana Yoga platform, he continues with Bhava Bhakti, right? Because he knows, Krishna says here already, that the yogi who is rendering devotional loving service to me, he is the greatest. He is the most intimately united in yoga. So that is what Krishna wants us to eventually attain. So from Bhava Bhakti, we can eventually attain Prema Bhakti, which can only be done by the Bhakti path. So the Jnana path can only bring us to Dhyana, and from there we have to switch to Bhava Bhakti, and from there we can get Prema Bhakti. So here, he who is situated in knowledge of me is just like me, and I consider him to be the highest and most perfect goal. So this is the devotee who has come to this level is attaining the highest goal. What is this highest goal? The highest goal is Bhagavan realization. To understand that the Lord is a person, and that because the Lord is a person only, one can love that person and one can serve that person. Otherwise, how to serve, right? So therefore, we have come to this realization. So therefore, Krishna says in 9.1, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this confidential knowledge of what? Of Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga, therefore, is meant for the devotee, is meant for the person who is not envious. So for the envious people, Krishna gives the other path, the Jnana path, which is very difficult, which one has to go through and purify himself and everything, and then remove that envy. Once he comes to Jnana, and once he comes to Dhyana and attains the Paramatma, once he sees Paramatma, then that envy will slowly break down, and then he will start this bhakti. So that's why this chapter 9, it begins like this. So this is for the devotee's understanding. So this is Raja Vidyam. So I think I'm shooting over time. So what I will do, I won't finish this. I will just go through some of it and I will stop. So Raja Vidyam, basically, this chapter begins by Krishna saying, this is the king of knowledge, the topmost. This is the most secret of all. So the idea is we want you to develop bhakti, we want you to develop prema in this life, in this material creation, so that you can come back to the spiritual kingdom, Antaranga Shakti, where you will be in a natural situation. So that's why people will not fall down again after that. So that's the secret. So Krishna, he will, but it will happen. Once we follow this path, it's just a matter of time. It will eventually happen. So it's not for the envious. So I spent a considerable amount of time explaining this particular point here. And it is the king of knowledge. It is the king of secrets. And the nature of bhakti is that. What is the nature of bhakti? See, the nature of bhakti is, it is joyfully performed. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of secrets, is the purest of knowledge. Pavitram, it's called Pavitram, the purest of knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self, one is able to see ourselves and also the Lord in connection. It is the perfection of religion. So this is the perfection of God's plan. Krishna's plan is fully revealed in this Bhakti Yoga. That is his plan for all of us to develop this Bhakti and develop Prema. And to give us impetus, this Bhakti Yoga is easy to perform. And not only is easy to perform, it's joyfully performed. Sukham. So eating prasadam is joyful, isn't it? Chanting Maha Mantra in the beginning it's like this, but as we do it, it becomes very, very joyful. So we just have to continue that process. So it's eating. Prabhupada would like to say, Hare Krishna consciousness is all about eating, chanting, and dancing and feasting. And this is basically spiritual life in the bhakti path. But of course, there is sadhana. Every day we have to do the sadhanas. And in this way, we worship the Lord. So it's joyful. It's not like the jnani. The jnani has to go alone. He has to sit alone, and then he has to do all these things. It's very difficult. Whereas this is much easier. So then we will stop here. I won't go into the rest of it. With that, we would like to ask if there's any other questions before we end.
Prabhu, I have a question.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you say people suffer because of various diseases like cancer or because of the karma, right?
Yes.
So, but if doctors treat these patients, does the karma go to the doctors or to whom?
You see, karma, there's good karma and there's bad karma. So when the doctor does his duty to save the patient, then he gets punya. So it's not spiritual. What the doctor does is not spiritual. He treats the patient, it's his duty. So he's doing a kindness. So therefore he gets punya. It's not that he takes the bad karma of the patient or anything like that. It doesn't work like that. He's simply doing his duty.
Okay. A bit worried.
No, Lapu, it's not like that. Even if, because there is dharma. So that's the thing, we have to understand dharma. So dharma is not according to our whim. It's not based on our morality or what we think is right. It is based on scripture. So every duty has a dharma. Like for example, if one is a husband, one is a wife, one is a child, one is a parent, one is a teacher, one is a doctor, or one is a king, one is a leader. So all of them have certain dharmas. So we can understand these dharmas. So for a dharma of a what do you call a doctor, from what I understand a little, I didn't really go through and all, but I've read a bit on Ayurveda. So the doctor should not consider whether the person is qualified or not qualified. He should just heal. His job is to heal, just like how justice is blind. So in the same way, medicine is also blind. One cannot see the person, even if it's a convict or a criminal. If that particular convict or criminal comes and asks your help, then one is obliged to do it. And one does not get karma for that. I mean, there is karma, we get punya, we get good karma. We don't get spiritual credits. It's not that we get our karma, but we don't get bad karma. Weak karma is called bad karma, or we got or sin. It's not sinful activity.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? Anything else to ask? So I hope I didn't confuse you with that session just now. I hope it was a bit with some models and all that. So if there are any questions, if anything you have also later, you can write to me or put it in the group, and we can discuss also. Okay. So if there's
Thank you, Guru, Prabhu.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you very much. I'll see you all again. Bhagavad
Thank
Gita
you.
ki jai, Srila
Yeah, sure.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Prabhu.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Prabhu.